Welcome in, everyone, to another special edition of AYS Sports. I am your host, Blake Ruffino, and as you can see, we are here with our good friends over at ServiceHawk Digital Media and ServiceHawk Digital Marketing, where they soar above the competition. Go over to servicehawk.io today if you have any questions, if you're an HVAC, electrical pro, generator pro, or you own a business, run a business, and know that your marketing needs to take another step. You can't see, but there are a whole bunch of plaques around here as why our good friends over at ServiceHawk continue to dominate the space in marketing, because everything that Lee, Justin, and the gang do, they are exceptional at. That is the reason why we have partnered with our good friends over at ServiceHawk, and while you see us here, because I think that everything that they are doing is top-notch and to the next level. So, again, you own a business, run a business, you need to get over to ServiceHawk Digital Marketing, where they do soar above the competition. So as we've been doing here at ServiceHawk, we have been doing a Q&A session. I think it's been really productive and really good. A lot of you have really enjoyed it. This Q&A that we've been doing on every Wednesday, Thursday, I've been coming to you, asking you questions, and the question has been simple. What is the biggest question mark that you have going into Ole Miss? And today, we are going to pull 6 questions from Twitter and Facebook combined and start answering some of these questions that you have. It's just my reaction and my thoughts to your overall questions going into the game this upcoming week. So let's get into a couple of them. Number one, this is from Rigdon. He says, Blake, I'm an Ole Miss fan, but I have to ask the question, what's up with Caden Durham and his health? Are you concerned about the running game? And there were a lot of questions on Facebook. I think 100-plus questions have already come in. And on Twitter, about 30, 40 of the same thing. I have the same questions in reference to, like, Phil Williams asked the same question. Rigdon asked the same question. Multiple people are asking the same questions about the run game. So Rigdon, Phil Williams, let's put this all into the same category because it's the biggest question that we fielded today. Number one, let's get to Caden Durham. So Brian Kelly, and why we're doing this a little bit later than the normal, Brian Kelly was on the SEC teleconference today and said that Caden Durham's status for this game right now is questionable. He had been practicing, doing some things, but I don't even want to get into, and we can get into, the Caden Durham injury news. I think from that perspective, no, I don't think he's healthy enough to where you would want him to be. I do think that will limit him to some extent because he's a running back. But I got to be real with you. I don't know if Caden's been giving you the level of production over the last couple of weeks to where you don't need to have a conscious conversation about getting Juwan Johnson some more touches, getting Xavier Thomas some more touches from the running back position. There's so many things that we can talk about in the run game. And I do think that there comes a question of potential and talent with Caden Durham versus the overall production that guys like Xavier Thomas and guys like Juwan Johnson have been giving you, specifically because of the fact that, look, we can talk about potential, we can talk about status all the live long day. I don't know if Juwan Johnson just doesn't get more carries in this game. I don't know if Xavier Thomas just doesn't get more carries in this game. I think that's where they will lean right now as we talk about this on Wednesday, because we don't really know Caden Durham's status. The other part about that, and in that question, is just his overall health. Even if he was being productive, the conversation would be, is he ready to go? No, he's not. And when I mean ready to go, let me clarify that. I don't think, and clearly he's not fully healthy. Brian Kelly said that he was questionable, but it would be still a big question mark, even if he had been highly productive throughout the first couple of weeks, about what he will be able to give you in this game. Right now, I think that there's got to be a decision and a question mark about the run game, and then there's got to be the level of question about how much do you get Caden Durham in there, depending on his status. But if you don't just give Juwan Johnson and even Xavier Williams, or Harlan Berry for that matter, some more touches in a game like this, when it is Ole Miss's biggest weakness is defending the run. Now, I said we were going to combine the two and talk about them, so let's do that. So Phil Williams was just somebody that we pulled on the question. He says on Twitter, O-line run game, that's my biggest question coming in the week. Again, on Facebook and Twitter, that was the biggest question about this. And look, we talked about it last night. Let's talk about it a little bit more in depth here. Listen, the biggest weakness for LSU is their run game. It's not remotely close. You're 111th in the country in rushing through 4 weeks. But the counteract to that is Ole Miss is 128th in the country in run defense. Which weakness is going to be better? It is literally, to me, essentially the game this week. Ole Miss has been god-awful stopping the run, but guys, you barely got 135 yards rushing after you blew out Southeastern last week. You should, at minimum, with the amount of rushes that you had against SLU, you should have had more than 150. You couldn't get that against them. So what makes me believe that you're going to turn right around this week and be able to find it? I don't know if you can. And I do think for me, and I've been very vocal about this, the biggest area for me on this team that is a weakness is clearly your run game. I think there are multiple things, and let's just talk about the run game in general. There have been multiple things plaguing this LSU team from a run game perspective. Number one, your offensive line has just not been good enough, personnel-wise, scheme-wise, and just overall physicality up front. You have not been to the level of where you need to be at LSU or just in general of an SEC team. And you talk about that, and I understand Brian Kelly's very bullish along this offensive line, that he thinks that they can continue to get better and be better. Maybe they can, and maybe this is finally the week through 17 games of Joe Sloan being your offensive coordinator that you can actually get a run game going. But there are multiple things plaguing it. I don't think that up front, just as an offensive line, you've played good enough as a cohesive unit to be able to run the football effectively. That's number one. I don't know if you have been going through some of the right techniques and playing through some of the same techniques, because Brian Kelly keeps bringing up every press conference, well, our technique's got to get better. Our technique's got to get better. We got to be more fundamentally sound along the offensive line. Well, when I hear that, and I hear Brian Kelly say that, I don't like calling about people's jobs or anything like that, but I do think it's an indictment on Brad Davis to say, hey, man, you've had these guys for quite some time, and the technique is not where it needs to be. I do think that you play too high as an offensive line. I think leverage has been a massive problem for you the last 2 years. But there is other things into that have plagued this run game that we have not discussed, because it is very easy and sometimes lazy to strictly blame the offensive line for all of your run game issues. The other truth of that is that your running back room and your running backs in general have missed blatant and obvious holes and did not go in the direction that they've needed to go. I think for some parts of this, you've been pitter-pattering around the line of scrimmage because of what has been happening with the offensive line. There have been times that you've been hitting the backfield, and I get that. But when you actually have a crease, guys, there have been multitudes of times where you are not hitting the right hole or don't have the awareness or vision to hit the right hole when there is a crease. You know, I talked about this during the Florida week. LSU ran a counter twice, and you're just missing a wide open hole, and you're running into the back of an offensive lineman because you're trying to go exactly where the run is being called. And that's not always how the run game's going to work. There have been times where this offensive line, and I could pull this up on my phone, where you look at an all-22 copy, and I'm saying to myself, that is blatantly wide open. That is a very good run call, and that's a very good thing that is executed by your offensive line, and then the running back misses it. And that has been consistent with every single one of them that has had a carry this year. I do want to see Xavion Thomas get more carries because, guys, he's the one that continues to get the production. Production always is going to outweigh potential and talent, because at the end of the day, it's only about going into this one singular game about the production. It is a weakness, and it has been a weakness for you over a year and a half. Guys, over 17 games, this has been a weakness. And I question so many things, and I look at Ole Miss, and I see Ole Miss and say to myself, look, man, they have been god-awful. And I do think that you need to get Nussmeier involved in the run game, considering how bad and god-awful Ole Miss was in defending the run and defending Taylon Green. And I get that Taylon Green is a better athlete than Garrett. I'm not asking Garrett to run the ball 10 times. I'm asking him to do a zone read 2 to 3 times in this game to keep everybody, especially this Ole Miss defensive line, to keep everybody contained in what they need to do. Because if Garrett pulls the ball a couple of times and gets 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 yards, that's going to be so productive when you're not even averaging over 140 yards rushing per game. When you've had games against Louisiana Tech, you've had games against Southeastern, and you can't even run for 130 plus in some of these situations. By the way, just throwing this out there, you had 135 rushing yards against Southeastern last week. 26 of it came from Garrett Nussmeier on a scramble. Think about that for a moment. That is where I look at this and say, listen, man, you got to be better there. And listen, too, another thing. In college football, in today's world, in today's society, your quarterback's got to be able to run the football. And Garrett has got to find the chances and take those chances for you to be able to be successful. So I know it's a lot of y'all's question. It should be a lot of your question. I don't know which one's going to prevail. You have the worst team in the SEC in run defense versus the worst, one of the worst, but arguably the worst rushing attack in the SEC. One of them's going to prevail. My worry is that it's not going to be you. And guys, it doesn't matter if it's this week. It doesn't matter if it's next week. At some point, not being able to have an effective running game is going to lose you a game. As great as your defense is, it's going to, quite frankly, lose you a game. All right. Couple more here. Texas Vet MF on Twitter says, Blake, who will be the X factor in this game? Let's go. Let's pick one on the offense and one on the defense. If LSU wins, I think the X factor is Aaron Anderson. When I watch Arkansas versus Ole Miss from a couple of weeks ago, I see Arkansas and Bobby P. and Taylon Green constantly attacking the middle of the field and obliterating Ole Miss and obliterating and getting their safeties out in space. I'm very intrigued to see how Pete Golding tries to defend Aaron Anderson, who had some massive production against Ole Miss literally a year ago. Do you try to take away Aaron Anderson and tell all the other receivers to beat you? And they very well may do that. Omega Blake destroyed Ole Miss over the middle of the field because they weren't getting enough depth from the linebacker position. Their safeties were getting lost in man and zone coverage. I don't think things got fixed against Tulane. Tulane not attacking the middle of the field in the passing game was absolutely abysmal, but Ratzlaff missed a lot of things that were there that could have kept Tulane in this game before they ultimately broke down. I do believe that Aaron Anderson offensively could be your X factor in the passing game. I feel like if they gave Xavion Thomas some more carries from being at the running back position, it would actually be him that is your X factor. But I don't trust Joe Sloan to actually do that and do that enough for me to say that. I think it's Aaron. I think you need to, at minimum, give him 10 targets. They have been walking safeties over slot guys, meaning Ole Miss has. And there's not a safety that you will see in the regular season that I believe that can remotely come close to a full game and stopping Aaron Anderson. He has been your most productive guy. He's been your most productive guy the last 2 years, and I don't like that it takes you a quarter or quarter and a half to start getting Aaron Anderson involved. Now, it didn't take you long to get him involved last week, but against these high profile games, against these high profile opponents, it's been taking you way long. But so on the offense, I think it's Aaron Anderson. And quite frankly, I think every single week and through week 12, Aaron Anderson is going to be your X factor moving forward, unless some different storylines start to come up. Is it Jawan Johnson? Like, I wonder if it's not Jawan Johnson because of Caden Durham's health status. That, listen, man, I love the way that Jawan's just putting his head down and going and getting positive yards. It's something that Caden Durham has not done. And he's got to hold on to the football because Jawan's just, the level of production has been there and it needs to continue to be there. Defensively, it's Harold Perkins. If you're asking me who is the biggest X factor for LSU as a whole, it is Harold Perkins. The reason Perkins is the number one X factor for LSU in this one is because of Trinidad Chambliss, the Ole Miss quarterback, and how he wants to run and things that he can do in the pass game with his legs that can really hurt you. You have not seen a quarterback that I think yet this year is as mobile as him, and that teams will, quite frankly, use him in the running game. You didn't see that really versus Clemson a lot. You saw it some, not a lot. And when they did it, Harold Perkins was there to stop Cade Klubnik. But since then, DJ Lagway's not been a factor in the run game. Louisiana Tech has not really been a factor in the run game. Southeastern, not really. And they tried to, but, I mean, I don't know if I consider Southeastern trying to run the quarterback on you is what I'm going to judge that off of. Perkins is going to be the X factor. Do you spy Chambliss? Do you send him Perkins on pressures to get after him? I think that Perkins is going to get after Chambliss a lot. And I think you're going to spy him a lot. And I think that you're going to do a lot of the same things that you did against Cade Klubnik because you were worried about his scrambling ability. And I do think Klubnik was a really good athlete, and Perkins limited a lot of things that he did. You know, the funny thing about Klubnik in that Clemson game is when Perkins wasn't on him or wasn't schematically involved in getting after Klubnik or spying him, whatever, it was the three big productive plays that Klubnik had with his legs. After that, every time that he's tried to run, it was Harold Perkins that had a massive factor in it. Chambliss is going to be a part of this run game. And listen, last year you had a massive problem with stopping zone reads, veers, simple quarterback powers, quarterback counters. You were awful at it. And I do think your physicality up front is a lot different along your defensive line, which is going to help you. But from an overall standpoint, I think the spy of Harold Perkins, the pressure that that Blake Baker's going to try to put on Chambliss to try to make him make great throws is going to be a big deal. I think you got to keep Chambliss in the pocket, make him beat you with his arm. And if he does, tip of the cap to the young man. You did something that I didn't know that you were going to be able to do, and you go from there. There was another question that was asked in there. Blake, do you think that we are going to be prepared for two quarterbacks? Absolutely. I don't think that you weren't prepared for Marcel Reed a year ago. Let's just be real. It had nothing to do with being prepared and Blake Baker not being prepared for Marcel Reed a year ago. The problem was that you physically got pushed around and you kept making boneheaded plays. That was the reason that quarterbacks ran all over you. You weren't good enough in your front seven. You did not have the personnel. Well, Blake, how do you know that? Well, you went and got 4 new defensive linemen to start for you. Pyburn, Gooden, Patrick Payton, and Jamari Butler has been rotating in there. You have not been good enough. It's as simple as that. Then you went out and got 2 safeties who have been really good in the run game. A.J. Halsey's going to have to have a big game too. Coming down in the box and lighting Lacey up, because there are going to be some rush lanes, and 13's going to have to come down in that box and light him up. Like I don't even know who sings that song, Light Him Up, but he's going to have to play that all week. He's going to have to do that too. I don't know if I am very intrigued to see the rushing attack for Ole Miss, how they try to use Chambliss. Is it Austin Simmons? Like, we're not even talking about Austin Simmons. So maybe it is, maybe it's not. I don't know how Lane is going to use that, and I'm not going to sit here and speculate like I do know. I do think it's going to be Trinidad Chambliss, and I think he's been the better quarterback of the two. Should it worry you about what happened last year in the run game? Yes, but this defense has given you nothing to say that you should worry about them. Nothing. What have they done? I mean, they have not given you a reason to worry about them until they do. And Lane Kiffin is a master at finding a weakness that you have and exposing that weakness. I mean, per Lane's words this week, I don't know if he wants to throw the football a lot on your secondary. So they're going to try to lean on you a lot here. All right. Couple more here. John Cummings says, Blake, do you think we can score with Ole Miss? If you get in a shootout, no, you can't. There's nothing offensively that tells me that you can put up 35 points on them. even though I think they're god-awful in the run game. Because you just haven't been consistent enough in the offensive side of things that would make me believe that you will be consistent enough offensively. So if basically, hey, can we outscore Ole Miss? Well, there's a couple of things with that. Number one, can you outscore them to win? Well, yeah, if you limit them to 20, 21 points, you limit them to 17 points, absolutely, you can get to 24 points on this defense for Ole Miss. But if you're starting to get in the 30s, no, I don't think you're going to outscore them at all. I don't have the confidence in your passing game. I don't have the confidence really in your running game that you've been consistent enough for you to do that. So to that question, to John Cummings, no, absolutely not. I don't think you can score with them. I don't think that you can go full 2023 on them. No, you can't, because you have constantly shot yourselves in the foot. This offensive line has constantly shot themselves in the foot. You got to make this one more of a 28-21 game, a 24-17 type of game. You start getting into the 30s, you're in a lot of trouble. I don't know if LSU can score 30 on them. Do I see an avenue where you can? Yes. If Juwan Johnson is your running back and you're actually being productive in the run game, 100%, because it's going to take so much off of Garrett. But again, what has last year and what has this year shown me that you can do that? What? There's just not a lot. By the way, guys, this game's on the road, and it's still a big factor here. All right. Jordan Wilkinson, what's up, buddy? He says on Facebook, he says, Blake, why does the media say that we suck now? We were conservative the first couple of weeks. I don't think that there's an area where Ole Miss is better than us. We were conservative because of Nuss's injury. I understand not running the football. All right, Jordan, let's break that down. I don't know if the media thinks that you suck. What I think that the media, because the media, as an example, like, you're still top 5 in the AP poll, right? So I don't think everybody in the media thinks that you suck. What I think you're asking here is, why are people thinking that Ole Miss can beat you? Why, over our good friends over at FanDuel, why do they have you LSU as the dog in this game? Well, the reason's pretty simple of why they have you as not the favorite in this game. You can't run the football. And I think the inconsistencies that you have had offensively, teams and people and betting sports books, they need to see you offensively be better. And I think that there are a couple of things. Like, even if I talk to the guys over at FanDuel, I think that they believe that, number one, you can't run the football. Is there going to be a game where Nussmeier's got to throw it 40 times to win a game and he starts turning the ball over? What is his health status? I think that there's a lot of things that go into that. I don't know if anybody in the media necessarily thinks that you suck. What I do believe is why this game is favored for Ole Miss. Well, it's you going on the road, and really and truthfully, I don't know if it's really them being favored, because the 3-point in college football is more of a home and away. I think LSU would be favored on a neutral field because it's a 1.5-point spread. This is basically a pick 'em. And it really just comes down to your offense. What have you done offensively, and what have you shown offensively that makes people feel as if that you can be consistent enough for you to be able to do anything worth a damn? Like, legitimately. I don't know if there's anything that you've done. I mean, you've had some explosive plays. Garrett's done some good things. I thought you were fine against Clemson offensively. I don't think you were great. I think you were about average. It's basically because you have been so inconsistent running the football, and you can't run the football. And guys, you can barely run the football in Louisiana Tech and Southeastern. So this probably is the best offensive team that you've seen in Ole Miss. I don't really even think that what we've seen through the first 4 weeks, that's really even a hot take at this point. So you ask why, Blake, why is Ole Miss favored in this game? Well, consistently, you can't run the ball. You haven't been able to really hit explosives in the pass game consistently. Your quarterback's coming off of a torso injury. You don't know what play calling is going to look like. You've shot yourselves in the foot a lot. I don't know if I lean there. You know, like I still look at the Miami and Florida game, and Miami was only up 13-7 with 5 minutes left, and Florida goes for it multiple times on fourth down on their own 20, and they can't convert. And everybody's like, oh, well, Miami just beat them 26-7, and that's better than what LSU did. Well, LSU beat them by 10. And I get I get why people like to use and try to use transitive properties. But I think Garrett, to some regards, was just as effective as Carson Beck, and Miami was. But Miami leaned on him. Miami was able to run the football on him. They were able to do stuff. They didn't have to face off against Caleb Banks either. And they looked sloppy in and of their own right. I just think it's because of your offensively that you've been so highly inconsistent. And in being so highly inconsistent, there have just been multiple issues where people look at this and say, this defense at some point is going to break down and get broken, and you're not going to be able to overcome. All right, that should be it. Screw the overlay thing. All right, that will be it for us today in our Q&A. Thank you for joining us. Go on YouTube, subscribe, hit that notification bell. We greatly appreciate you doing that. We noticed during the thing that the Carter Bryant thing was up as well. Technical difficulties will be technical difficulties. And we will, it is what it is. Doesn't stop the content, so just get over the overlay. We've been here with our good friends over at Service Hawk Digital Media and Service Hawk Digital Marketing, where they soar above the competition. Get in touch with Lee. Get in touch with Justin. Go over to servicehawk.io today. We'll see y'all tonight. Y'all have a good one. Peace.